Hey guys, my name's Locke. I want to do a brief key review of the Motherlode dungeon on level 13, which I've played a couple of days ago. So we're a random group from the Dungeon Finder tool. We don't know each other, nor are we in comms. And we just do the standard Bloodlust pull with a little skip in the beginning. If you play Evoker, make sure to always use Tip the Scales in the starting room so that you have it ready again when it starts, so your first fire breath is essentially instant, you don't need to cast it, doesn't make a huge difference. And then you want to recommit your Tip the Scales rather quickly in the pull. I do it here and cast the Spirit Bloom in stasis as soon as I get the knockback effect from the uppercut to apply a haste buff to myself. And also get Threats of Fate buff on my teammates, which increases their damage output as well. I'm pretty surprised by how well my group is controlling this pack, so there's not a lot of damage coming in. I sort of overcommit my defensive cooldowns like Rewind and Emerald Communion, because I expect much more damage to go out. Essentially, the danger in this pull is from the refreshment vendors casting Iced Spritzer, because if it goes out it stuns a person. If it goes on you, all you can do is Communion, otherwise you are not getting out of it, and then basically heal while you're stunned. If it goes on someone else, you can dispel it. And then also the hired assassins need to be interrupted when they cast their Blade Dance, as well as the Toxic Blades. So there's potential for a lot of damage to go out, but the group managed this rather well. Now these mechanized Peacekeepers are the most dangerous mob, I would say, in this first section. This is also why you see a lot of routes just skipping them altogether. We do play this one here. Essentially the strategy for the charged shield is the usual AoE healing strategy with Evoker. Apply echoes to all of your teammates, use Verdant Embrace on yourself, then you have Lifebind on the whole group, and then use a Spirit Bloom to heal off the AoE. It's a little bit more challenging with this mob because the AoE is also a significant tank hit in the beginning, so make sure that the tank has sufficient healing on himself while the group AoE is going out. It also helps to just use time dilation in this moment, so while you're focused on healing the group back up, you can put time dilation on the tank and then focus on tank healing as soon as the pulsing AoE damage is over. At this point we pull this pack by itself, which is a rather easy pull, but I'm sometimes a friend of using the easy, doing the easy pulls when you're in a PUG and you feel like you have sufficient damage to time the key if you're not taking any risks. One thing you can do is use your rescue if the uppercuts go out to just pull the uppercut target down immediately, and if you're the target yourself you can just Verdant Embrace back down to the ground. I tried to do that here. Unfortunately I took the wrong target because sometimes my mouse over rescue execution is sort of messed up. Now this pull is one of the more difficult pulls, I would say. Because we do them solo, it's not that difficult, but if you pull the packs together then it becomes more difficult, because we have an assassin in this pull which casts Fan of Knives, which is a pulsing AoE, and then also the charged shield, which is the same, and the refreshment vendor, which just needs to be interrupted. I use my Communion here. I don't really need to, I also have the stasis up, but yeah, mostly for the mana regeneration from Emerald Communion, because the next boss, it will rotate off cooldown anyway, because the next boss doesn't do any damage. We have a crisis moment here as the tank doesn't get out of the puddle and dies, and yeah, the monk realizes quickly he has aggro and runs away. I rescue him, and then we just focus on the ads. The rogue also helps in stunning the refreshment vendor with a kidney shot, and we sort of take it down, go from there. So a bit of a panic moment here, but not too much harm done. We only lost one life and not a lot of time. So I res the tank back up and we pull the first boss, the coin operated crowd pummeler. If you even want to call it a boss. Essentially it doesn't do anything except for the static pulse AoE. As per usual, I put echoes on the group, and then he uses Spirit Bloom with the Lifebind effect to heal everybody back up. And then there's a little bit of a damage over time effect left on the group afterwards, which you can heal off with Dream Breath or just reversions. And other than that, you're just essentially doing damage for the remainder of the boss fight. And that's mostly just spamming Living Flames. I have my Living Flame set up in a macro so that it always attacks the target of my target. So you will notice that usually in the whole dungeon, for the most part, I am targeting the tank, and all of my damage spells, including Disintegrate, just go into the target of my tank. That's usually a very good way to do it, so you don't have to start targeting mobs and then targeting teammates again. And because I heal with mouse over, I can basically just have the tank as my target for the whole time. If ever I do not, I have the targeting of the tank on my upper mouse wheel, so I just scroll up to get the tank back in my target. And most of the tank healing I therefore also don't do with mouse over, but I just press the buttons for the tank because he is always my target. Sometimes this has some problematic effects in random PUG groups, because some tanks will not have a target. they just target themselves. Always drives me crazy if I'm in the middle of a pull and I want to do damage, and then my Living Flame just goes into the tank because he's not targeting an enemy mob. And of course, if the tank is already running toward the next pack, then it might also not work because the next pack is obviously still out of range. So at the end of a pull, if I still want to do damage, I do tap to the mobs themselves. But for the most part, this works really well and takes mental resources away from managing the different targets and doing damage. And usually I would expect the tank to be able to have the target that should take the priority damage anyway. So sometimes that doesn't work out perfectly, but I think for the most part it's worth the reduction in mental load that you have to deal with as a healer. Now these packs are probably the most dangerous pulls in the dungeon, except maybe the last area with the mines. But I would even say these are more dangerous here, because you have these caster ads, the Earth Shapers, who cast the Rock Lances, and if they go out at the same time as the Azerite Extraction, then individual people can get one shot by the lances, so it's important to keep them interrupted. What's good about Evoker in these pulls is that you are able to dispel the bleed debuff. So the Azerite Extractors have a tank hit which applies a bleed, it's called Puncture, and you can just once every minute dispel it with Cauterizing Flame and help the tank out a little bit with that. Now in the next Azerite Extraction I try to set it up, I think. Do I?
Rapid extraction.
Yeah, no, not really. Yeah, maybe. So I put the Echo, it's only on one teammate. And my Verdant Embrace also isn't ready. I die because I get targeted by Rock Lance. Probably should have committed Rewind immediately when I saw that my setup wasn't really working out. I might have also used my Renewing Blaze when the hit, so when the Azerite Extraction started, it might have healed me up a little bit, or I could just have used the health pot. Yeah, we're just a little bit slow and not properly set up, and I didn't have my Obsidian Scales to reduce the damage. I could also have used Rescue to give myself a shield, but yeah, like that I just died. It's okay though, like before we have one death, but not too much harm done. Now we pull the Elementals. with their earth-shaking quake, or how it's called. So again, a pack of mobs, 3 mobs, which need to be constantly interrupted, because they will get themselves a shield with the tectonic barrier, or they will do a big AoE damage with Furious Quake. I actually do get a little bit worried here, so I knock back in the last second that we don't have enough interrupts remaining, but now I see the interrupts have rotated back up. Currently we have 1. But the mage is also on point with using Dragon Breath. But here you can see I'm actually attacking the high health mobs, target, because that's the target that the tank was targeting. Ideally I would have wanted to attack the low health target. I mean, it's a bit of a trade-off, right? If you attack the high health target, then you make sure that you kill the pack efficiently, in the sense that you don't do too much, don't waste too much time doing damage to a single target, while the other one is already dead. If you attack the low health target first, you essentially increase safety, in the sense that yeah, if the target has died, then the AoE damage is no longer a threat. Here again, in this pull with the Taskmaster, you get to dispel the tank once with the bleed. So I try to do it in a way that I wait until I see that the tank is struggling and running away, and then I use the bleed dispel. At this point, it wasn't perfectly done. I think the tank was already at a distance where the bleed would have run out. If the tank is playing it well, you can also just dispel the bleed at the end when the pull is over, so that you get a second to drink. The tank can already pull the boss. Now Azerok, I would say, is the most challenging boss in the dungeon, because there's a lot of AoE damage going out from these from the empowered Earth Rager ad. I also aim my Fire Breath at this ad instead of maximizing damage, so just that it dies quickly. I blink away too far, these two are out of range for my Spirit Bloom, so you have a bit of a range problem here, especially if the range DPS that's being targeted is running at the very outer edge of the circle, but overall it's not too bad. And if the group manages to kill the empowered ad relatively quickly, then there's not so much damage going out. Essentially it's just, for the most part, healing pulsing AoE damage. Echo the whole group, Burn Embrace yourself, apply Life Bind, and then just do additional healing. You can do Spirit Bloom, especially for the big hits, for the Resonant Quake, or just Dream Breath, or you can also just echo Reversion. What I like to make sure is that my targets always have Reversion for the healing buff. So targets with your Reversion on it, I think, receive 10% more healing. And then it's essentially just rinse and repeat. What I would say, if you make the group yourself as an evoker, try to invite at least one ranged player into the group, because if you don't, then it will be you who is being targeted and who needs to run around the room and yeah, and kite the ads around. And sometimes there's a lot of damage going out in this fight, and that's just yeah, a mental load that you don't necessarily need to have. Even though I've done it a couple of times like that as well, it's not... It makes the fight harder, but not incredibly so.
Tectonic Smash.
This fight can be much easier or much harder depending on how well the group is doing with killing the empowered ad quickly. Because essentially when the empowered ad is dead, there is no additional damage going out, so you basically don't have to heal anything until the Resonant Quake comes out. Either way, we do manage to kill it. The rogue gets a bit of overzealous here, tries to run down, gets blown up immediately. But this happened to me a couple of days ago as well, when I blinked forward and I blinked a little bit too far and just exploded. Now these pulls down here, they aren't so difficult, but I'm not that familiar with them yet, so I think some of the mobs cast Echo Blade, there it is, and I think what you need to do is spread out so that the Echo Blade doesn't hit multiple targets. I'm not entirely sure. If you know exactly what Echo Blade does, let me know in the comments. Yeah, but other than that, there's usually not too much damage going out. The Mind Lash damage is a focused spot healing damage that you need to heal off. You see right now it's on myself, and I take quite a bit of damage. And then you need to avoid these swirlies, because they will do a lot of damage and they will silence you for 5 seconds. And yeah, I will not avoid them, so you will see what that looks like in a minute. And then you get, when they spawn, there's also this brainstorm swirly on the ground. And you see I get hit. Now I can't do anything. I could rescue, but rescue is always a little bit risky with these swirlies going off, because obviously when you rescue you're also moving. Essentially, yeah, I think it's a bit of a design flaw with Evoker in general, especially with the Verdant Embrace. This is also why I only Verdant Embrace myself, essentially, except in very rare circumstances where I know that there's no AoE risk going on. Because this movement is just usually too risky, that you fly into some sort of puddle on the ground or into a frontal. So I would very much appreciate it if there was like a choice node where you could choose whether or not you want Verdant Embrace to move your character or not. Yeah, but we'll see if anything like that ever comes to fruition. Other than that, if you ever do get silenced, yeah, and I backpedal into the swirly. Wait a second for a battle res, but don't get one, so I run. If you ever do get silenced, basically all you can do is use Emerald Communion or Rescue. I use my Spatial Paradox to get back. I target the mage and use Verdant Embrace. I'm not really sure why I didn't hook to him. It should have moved me to him, but instead it used it on myself. But I was able to get off Tip the Scales Spirit Bloom at a long distance to make sure that my group lives, although they might have lived even without that. Now this pull, I would say, is rather difficult. If you take all of them together, there's a lot of spot damage going out with the Echo Blade and with the Mind Lash. You also have to dodge the swirlies. I Zephyr here. I don't actually think it does anything, probably a mistake. But generally my mindset with this pull is I can just blow through all of my cooldowns, because again the next boss is very easy, doesn't do any damage, so I'm very happy to use Rewind here, I'm very happy to commit Communion here, and yeah, essentially use all of my healing cooldowns just to live this pull. And I'm now very mindful of avoiding the swirlies after having been hit twice. I also, if that happens to me, I'm not usually very happy with myself. Yeah, it will certainly affect my gameplay for the remainder of the key, or until I feel like I've done something well again. But yeah, it happens from time to time, and especially if it happens as a healer, then the risk is that much greater. So we pull Rixa Flux Flame. It's essentially a trash mob, doesn't do anything. Except maybe, you see here I get the Azerite Catalyst on myself and just put it at the sides. Except maybe there's a bit of tank damage going on. So that's what you have to think about, just a bit of tank healing. It's not particularly dangerous, but yeah, there is some damage going out, for sure. And then the propellant blast just to clear the puddles on the ground. But even that doesn't really do any damage. So I use Renewing Blaze here, but essentially I don't even have to commit any defensives for my teammates if they get targeted by it. This wasn't actually optimal, that we didn't move the boss to the center, so we get this awkward space here in the middle, but what I learned in this key is that the old puddles actually start to recede, and now they are gone. So essentially it doesn't really matter then where the initial blast goes off, because you will always have the safe zone, even if you have to wait a second for it to spawn, or essentially the old non-safe areas to despawn. So that's rather useful knowledge to have if you're ever in the situation where it's sort of an awkward spot where old puddles are still on the ground. They will just go away, which makes the boss even easier because there's no risk of running out of usable space, essentially, unless the person targeted with the catalyst puts it in the wrong spot. So we go on to kill the boss. The next area it's actually not that difficult, but if you're playing in a PUG, it has a lot of potential for failure, in the sense that the mines chase down players, and yeah, there's just many deaths in this area to the mines because people get hit by the chasing fixate effect. Also, as a healer and as a preservation evoker, make sure that you're far enough away from the mine to be able to cast your empowered spells. Essentially, if there's also the barrages going out, it might be not so easy to get all of your empowered spells off to heal the charged shot AoE damage, but usually it's not too big of a problem. And again, just apply Echo to your group, life bind with Verdant Embrace, and then cast a Spirit Bloom. And this is how you can rather easily deal with the individual charged shot AoE effect from one of the big mobs. In the end you will have to fight two of them, which is also, especially on this key level, not that much of a challenge. You have a very good kit as an evoker to deal with that, but yeah, it certainly takes a little bit more planning than just the individual ones, which you can also heal pretty well without any additional planning. I actually find kinda weird that this mine isn't chasing me, although it's fixated on me, so that's why I took a little bit of time of getting up, because it was running after the tank, even though it was fixated on me. And yeah, maybe this caused a little bit more mental load than I would have liked it to. And I used my communion instead of just healing it normally, I guess, which I do now again. But not too bad. I underuse communion anyway, because I'm mostly a PvP player, or was anyway, and in PvP you usually commit your defensive cooldowns when you absolutely have to, and not as part of your usual rotation. But I think in Mythic Plus it's useful, especially for communion, to just integrate it into the rotation, because it also has the mana regeneration effect. Rewind I like to use still as a big defensive cooldowns when I've made a mistake with my healing, or someone else has made a mistake and taken excessive damage. Now we bloodlust this pull. I understand the reasoning. I don't think it's necessary strictly, so I don't find the charged shot damage to be particularly difficult to heal, and I think the boss has more failure potential. But yeah, either way, I guess, is acceptable. And what you want to do here is just the usual: life bind your whole group, cast Spirit Bloom. Unfortunately, I didn't have stasis for this pull. I should have had it, And I also used my communion, so I'm a bit low on cooldowns, but you can also always heal up with the fire breath. The damage is a pretty good heal, and then you also have the stacked 4 living flames, which you can shoot out at your team. It's also a very big heal.
Deploy crawler mine.
So all in all, not that difficult of a pull. Certainly will become more difficult at higher key levels.
Charged shot.
And then we pull the final boss. Tank is immediately moving to this safe spot. I'm not a friend of using this spot. I think it's not that mentally taxing for someone, ideally the tank, because he's the one moving the boss, to look at the little choppers at the side and move to the area where the choppers are not going, so that you can just dodge the micro missiles and you don't have to do this awkward dance with the micro missiles and the Gatling gun. And the tank actually does that here, so he realizes this spot is safe, he moves toward it, and essentially we avoid the micro missiles like this. I find this to be far superior. I mean, obviously it's a little bit of additional thought that goes into the fight, because you have to look at where the choppers are. And I'm sort of, for me it's a mix right now of trusting the tank and looking for myself. So here I look for myself, I see, okay, we need to go over there. Usually I would like to, I would like myself to look more at the choppers in this fight, because actually there isn't that much going on for myself either. I have a little bit of healing to do, but no excuse really to not always check the chopper position. You can also see with my camera angle that the camera is poorly positioned, I don't even see them. Now this is the dangerous part of the fight, because these buster shots are going out, they do damage to your teammates, so for everyone here it's a good opportunity to use defensive cooldowns, especially when the smash is going out. What you want to do as a healer is make sure that everyone is topped up as soon as the smash hits, so I do a bit of spot healing on the mage, and yeah, and you need to do that 3 times. As soon as the buster shot guys are dead, there isn't any additional danger going on still. But don't be afraid to commit your cooldowns here, as I shoot an awkward fire breath into nothing, because I realized that I can't do any damage to the boss, so I cast it. And then it's the third phase of the boss, where essentially just a repetition of the first one.
Homing missile. Micro missiles.
I like how the tank was playing here. I blinked the wrong area and then realized my mistake. Makes the fight so much easier if someone takes on the responsibility of moving the boss to the correct location. And obviously this person needs to do it right. If there's a high failure potential in that, then it's probably better to stand on this safe spot on the first grid on the bottom of the ground. But yeah. So here it's a bit annoying as an evoker that you can't usually heal the homing missile damage as soon as it goes out, because you don't have the range. People run away too far. So not too far in the sense that they are making a mistake, but too far for your limited range. Yeah, I blinked through the Gatling gun because I realized that the other side will have a bit of micro missile void zones on the ground.
Gatling gun.
And essentially it's just a rinse and repeat boss. We time the key, we have a little bit of time left in the end. Not perfect by any means, but overall I would say relatively clean. Yeah, I want to look at the log briefly of this fight. So in terms of overall numbers, I'm pretty happy with my performance. So I did relatively good damage. I think I could have still done more, and also did okay healing, although obviously the evoker passes are limited. Nobody plays this class, so if you compare the passes, for example from the fire mage 1100, and then evoker is just 24. Although here with the Outlaw Rogue it's also relatively few passes, I guess. Yeah. Okay, well that's it. Thank you for watching, guys, and see ya.